Awesome. Thank you, Elisa. I'm going to try and share my screen and talk at the same time, which feels like a cognitive challenge. So we'll see if I am able to do that. I don't think I was on the first slide, but there. Oh, not shared? Oh, I have to go to the meeting first. Oh, man. That's in another tab. Do you have a question to answer?
Oh, sure. I just didn't know if any questions for your presentation you can answer while she's. Oh, here we go.
Here we go.
Sorry.
I mean, I would happily cede time to Elisa for questions. I'm going to turn the captions on too, and this is my commentary on this. If you're using Google Slides or if you're using PowerPoint, they have built-in captioning features, which are good for universal design. So I'm going to make it as big as I can so we can all see it. So it's just this little dots at the bottom of the screen, and then they should appear. There we go. So if you've never seen that feature, super easy to turn on. I try and remember to turn it on whenever I'm giving a presentation, just so folks can read along as they're going. It's a great example of universal design. It took 10 seconds. It doesn't always work depending on folks' accent perfectly, but it's not bad. So I'm going to talk a little bit about our work training Blockly developers on accessibility and what we're doing. I'm working closely with my colleague, Andy Stefik, who I know many of you in this room know from the University of Nevada, Las Vegas. I'm going to talk a little bit about our project Access CS for All. And some of this y'all have heard this week already about why is accessibility important now. Talk about the work that we're going to do in terms of training developers. And then I really just want to hear from you all about what are we missing and what do you think this community needs as well. So Access CS for All is a project based at the University of Washington and UNLV, focused on K-12 computer science education and increasing the participation of people with disabilities. We've been around since 2014 working on this, and I'll say the landscape has really changed in that time. In 2014, we really had to get people in the room, and it was sometimes hard. And so it's so exciting to come to something like this, and like there's a whole session on accessibility with other people talking, and it's not just us. So, and of course, we give a lot of credit to Richard Ladner, our PI at UW, who really has been a leader in this field for decades. So fun to have Richard here with us as well. I will just point out that we have several resources. Access CS for All, part of that is Stefik's work with the Quorum programming language, which I'll talk about in a minute. We've done a lot of professional development for PD providers. What are you going out and teaching in your PD about students with disabilities so that the teachers in those classrooms are prepared for the students with disabilities when they end up in your classroom? We've done some work with curriculum. We had a long partnership with code.org working on an accessible version of the AP Computer Science Principles that they had. And then we also do real-time support. So if you go on our website, there's a phone number and an email address, and you can ask us a question, and we will answer it. My colleague Lila makes sure that somebody answers those questions. And sometimes we don't know the answer, right? But we have a network. We can connect you with other folks who will have an answer or will be struggling with the same thing. So that is what we are always happy to do. I feel like in this moment, there's a little bit of commentary I need to make. Access CS for All has been funded by the National Science Foundation. If you haven't been paying attention, there have been so many cuts to NSF funding. Just this week, there's been circulating information about Trump's budget request, or the NSF's budget request in Trump's budget, and the CS for All program, which supports these research practitioner partnerships, has $0. So I say that just as like, we've done great work, we're excited to be doing this. Who knows what the future looks like for a lot of us that are funded by NSF. So do with that what you will. So what are some of the things that we've learned in doing this work? One of the first meetings we had was in Baltimore, actually, at the Renaissance Harbor Place right there. It was 2014. My 9-month-old was with me because I'm from Maryland. My parents were babysitting. So I can remember it clearly. And it was the first time we got in a room with folks who had curriculum and had tools. And the very first thing we figured out was, well, they could go teach the teachers how to work with students with disabilities, but they were very constrained by the tools that they were using because so many of the tools were inaccessible, and that was not something that was going to be an easy fix. So that's really become this, well, how do we change the tools, right? The other thing that we hear all the time is students opting out of computer science because they assume it's not going to be accessible. So that blind student, even though they're only in high school, they've already learned this world wasn't built for me. I don't know if I should show up. So that is on top of the attitudes that they might be getting from teachers, parents, and other community members. Maybe their TVI, teacher for the visually impaired, has never had a student in computer science and is nervous to teach them to, right? And what kind of an environment does that create for the student who may need to opt in to that? So we know there's not very much accessible computer science education. I will also tell you, we get the question all the time about what tools are accessible for K-8. Lisa laughs because yes, that it's incredibly difficult to make these tools accessible. So we can sit here and talk about WCAG all we want, but that's not going to solve it in an instant. It's not very clear necessarily how to take those standards and apply them to something like a block-based programming tool. I'll just point to a paper Stefik and colleagues had at SIGSI 2024 about bringing accessibility to blocks. If you haven't read that and you're thinking about block-based accessibility, I would encourage you to do that. But I think what's really encouraging is in the last few years, we've seen increased interest in accessible tools. Elise has done such great work bringing the CS Access community together. And there is more community in this space, and that's really important. Okay, why is it now, right? Researchers are increasingly interested. The thing that's been really surprising to me in CS Access is that we've seen more and more state departments of education showing up. And now we're hearing from tool developers more and more, right? That they want to make sure things are accessible. And we're no longer the only ones showing up at conferences trying to raise awareness. Like, that is huge. There's all these accessibility rules and laws that we have talked about a bunch this week. And it does seem like, at least if you're concerned about the Title II rule, it does seem like the Trump administration is inclined to continue to move forward on that, from what I am hearing. So I'll talk a little bit about the work that we are doing thanks to the Block Accessibility Fund. We're really taking a two-pronged approach to accessibility, right? So part of it is that practical information, what is in Stefik's head and his team members' head about how we actually sit down. I mean, I'm taking no credit for this. I'm being very clear. This is Stefik's side of the game. What do we need to know to make block-based programming tools accessible? So they are working on a curriculum. And again, a lot of this is not straightforward. What does it mean for this programming tool to be accessible? And so they have been working on that. But it's also embedded in an understanding of disability culture and the experiences of people with disabilities, right? So I think it's really important as we do this work to do it with the ethos of nothing about us without us. Many of our team members on this project have disabilities, whether that is physical disabilities, neurodivergent, I have chronic illness and an anxiety disorder. We are bringing students with disabilities into the classroom to talk to developers about what have their experiences been like with the tools that they have at school. So I'm super excited about that. We're going to talk a little bit about the role technology plays in the lives of people with disabilities. If you've never seen the documentary Fixed, it's about 10 years old now, so it's not super recent, but it's fascinating discussions from people with disabilities about the role technology plays in their lives and whether they want technology to fix their disability. So we're doing workshops in summer 2025 and summer 2026, and there will also be online resources that we can impact beyond the room of that workshop. And I just want to say too, you might have noticed these pictures of students with disabilities in these presentations. These are all from workshops that we've held at UW with high school students with disabilities who are learning transition skills to college. And Stefik has literally come several years with Quorum and said, hey, here's a new feature I developed. Let's play with it in the classroom. And then you tell me what doesn't work. And then he takes that back to his lab and fixes the technology, right? So it's a great leadership experience for these students learning to advocate for themselves, but also taking into consideration what are the experiences of kids using this. And they're able to, even though I think so many of us in this room think Stefik has so much in his head and does such a great job, he learns something from the kids every year. Again, centering disability culture and lived experience. So we're thinking about the authentic inclusion of people with disabilities. I said a bunch of this on my other slide. And we're going to visit, UW has on our campus an Access Technology Lab, which has tons of tools that you can play around with, alternative input and output devices. So what do mouse options look like? What does eye gaze technology look like? And we'll go visit some of that. And also hear from a blind developer at UW who's responsible for UW's procurement of accessible technology. So I think that should be a really interesting conversation of what are those folks who are thinking about procurement, thinking about in the context of accessibility. So we have a workshop coming up later this month. Super excited that we'll have folks from a variety of companies and organizations in the room. And we'll have another workshop in 2026. So if you are not on our 2025 list of attendees, stay tuned and we would love to have you there. I'm almost at the end of my time, so I will share with you, these are some of the things we are thinking about, is talking about WCAG, talking about accessibility checkers, practicing not using a mouse, and what does that look like? Thinking about individual technology challenges that students face, luminance and color. I have had more conversations with Stefan about the color of his blocks than I care to admit. Talking about screen readers and ARIA, tagging and structures, accessible graphics. You know, I've been surprised when we've had some conversations with developers and they've been like, oh, we've got to make it, you know, so that the input is accessible and then it just outputs something that the blind kid's not going to see. Well, that doesn't solve the problem. The output needs to be accessible too. If we had time, I was going to ask for questions. We're going to make it interactive, so there's time for folks to do exercises and discussion, consider their own tools, and really just chat with the experts that are in the room and learn from one another. I was going to have a whole discussion with you about what we're missing, but if you have things that you're like, you didn't have this on this list and that's what you should be talking about, please convey me and tell me. I always appreciate that input. And I will just mention, if you want to stay up to date with what we are doing, you can shoot us an email at accesscs4all@uw.edu and ask to join our community of practice. We share every Friday, send out a blast of what I found interesting about accessibility this week. But we also share things like resources when they're available, our announcement of the summer 2026 training. So I will stop there. It's right at 12 o'clock.